This will be a day long remembered. Now I am the master.
Welcome to another episode of Legends and Theories. And welcome to my review of Spider-Man Life Story. This is honestly a great comic book, and I would highly recommend you check it out before you watch this video, because I'll be talking about full spoilers. And going into it, the basic concept of this is, what if Peter Parker aged normally instead of there being a reboot every 10 to 15 years for Spider-Man, putting him back to being a teenager. This is honestly just such a fun, unique, and really interesting look at Peter Parker, where it begins where Spider-Man did in the 60s and goes to the 2010s, going through so many of these crazy events that Peter Parker always faces in the main continuity, but with just there being no reboot to make him be younger for these stories. And it was super interesting. Obviously, it begins in the 60s. In the 60s, it sees Peter Parker not only meeting Norman Osborn, but also exposing that he is the Green Goblin and taking the Goblin in after he loses his memory. It was honestly just such an interesting thing, and it was just really fun. It sees Peter kind of thinking about if he should join into the Vietnam War and ultimately deciding not to. It also has him developing his relationship with Gwen Stacy and setting up for future comics. And at the end, there's these interesting stuff where kind of the background where Captain America wants to go and stop all of the killing in Vietnam, while Iron Man is fully fighting on the side of the Americans. It is honestly just really cool and interesting, and it goes into even more crazy concepts with the 70s where there's just so much more stuff going on where we get stuff like Doc Ock kind of getting his redemption and marrying Aunt May, Peter being married to Gwen, and then going into stuff like the Clone Saga, where there is a clone of Spider-Man made, also with Harry Osborn being the Green Goblin, and this one is the Black Goblin. And with this one, it also deals with the death of Gwen Stacy, where Harry Osborn tries to destroy the clones, but he doesn't know that it is actually the actual Gwen Stacy in there, and the clone was the one that was with Peter. This was a pretty crazy one, and it goes to set up more stuff in the future where the clone of Spider-Man is the only one that lives, and this is the one that would be Ben Reilly or the Scarlet Spider. The next one in the 80s deals with Secret Wars and the Black Suit, also with Kraven's Last Hunt, and I was honestly pretty interesting. You also have Peter and MJ in their relationship and them having kids, but them eventually breaking up at the end when the black suit causes them to just have some pretty big problems. It also has really awesome stuff where Kraven gets taken over by the black suit. Although they don't do too much with that. And I believe this also has the death of Aunt May in it. And yeah, honestly, that was all pretty interesting. I think that this one definitely has some of the most stuff going on in it, and it was just pretty cool. Going to the 90s, this sees Doc Ock returning at the beginning, and Tony Stark trying to go and take over Peter Parker's company, Parker Industries. This goes a little more into the Clone Saga, where Peter is taking on Doc Ock, who tries to convince him that he is actually a clone and Ben Riley is actually Peter Parker. And Peter allows this to happen with Ben taking over his life and him taking over Ben's, so he doesn't have to do as much and be able to just live a kind of normal life. And to be clear, this is the actual Peter Parker, and Ben is still the clone. And then this goes to continue on to the death of Harry Osborn in this one, and having Norman Osborn being behind all of this, and eventually dying of a heart attack after he learns that Harry was killed, and Peter at the end goes to MJ to be with her. The next one in the 2000s deals with sort of Spider-Verse, where this is the comic version of it, where he's being hunted down by the villain Morlun and his family. And this one just sees the death of Ben Riley, Peter Parker's identity being exposed, and also deals with the events of Civil War, which were kind of set up in the 60s and 70s with the entire thing with the Vietnam War. So I'm not really sure the full timeline of that because it seems they were fighting together in Secret Wars, but there may have just been a temporary alliance between the heroes to take on the villains. And then after that, they may have gone back to fighting because Tony Stark is trying to take everything from Peter, trying to blackmail him into working with the Public Avengers under the. There's like a superhero corps or something. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I'm looking at the comic right now, but I'm not specifically looking at it. It also sees one of Peter's kids get seriously injured when defeating Morlun, and his other kid becoming the new hero Spider Woman. And yeah, honestly, it's pretty interesting to see this going through it. There's just a lot of crazy things that happen, and at the end, we see everyone go away, but going into the 2010s, this is where things get crazy. Peter's kind of an old man, and in this, he is actually training Miles Morales to become the next Spider Man. They're going into space to stop a plan by Doctor Doom to kind of take over the world, and basically all the superheroes in the world have disappeared. Peter, being old, goes up, and it's eventually revealed that they're also doing the Superior Spider Man story where Doc Ock has taken over Miles' mind instead of Peter's. Peter is able to defeat Ock and get him to give up Miles' body, and at the end, Peter is eventually forced to sacrifice himself to save the world. It was honestly just a pretty great story and really well told. It goes over just so much crazy stuff. It is such a fun story. And there's a few other things that are added in. There's this extra comic where it looks at J. Jonah Jameson over the years, where he is constantly hating Spider-Man and blaming him for everything as he's put in jail for creating the Scorpion and kind of just pushing everyone away. But he is eventually able, through the clone of Gwen Stacy, who was acting kind of as his counselor, to realize that Spider-Man isn't the problem and it was ultimately him. He's eventually able to get over it and publishes a book about just how wrong he was after he gets let out of jail. This was honestly just another really great story. This was a really nice add-on, and it was just such a nice thing to look at the character of J. Jonah Jameson. I can just see a story through him, his eyes, and it being him to finally accept Peter Parker, or really Spider-Man, and not sure if he fully figured out who he was in this, but it was honestly just a really great story because it just showed him kind of realizing his problems really weren't with Spider-Man. They were internal problems, and that was just really well done. And yeah, honestly, this is just such a great comic. As I said, I would highly recommend reading it. I didn't go over the basics of it and most of the major plot points, but still, I think you should read it to be able to enjoy it for yourself because this is a really great, well-made comic. I think it should be at your Barnes& and Noble. That's where I found it. I found it like a little bit over a month ago when I was going for their after Christmas sale where things like 30% off for hardcovers, but I also saw this and I heard it was a great comic, so I decided to pick it up. And I really enjoyed it. I think you would definitely check it out. I wonder what you think. Please let me know in the comments, and I'll see you on the next episode of Legends and Theories. Thank you for watching this episode of Legends and Theories. Please subscribe, like the video, share the video, leave a comment, check out the video on screen, and may the Force be with you.